Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to the Bitcoin Stoa for another episode of Innovators, which is a long-form show where we invite founders and creators working within Bitcoin to tell their stories and share the vision for their projects. Current Moscow time is 15:38 at 7:09/253. And as a reminder, the Bitcoin Stoa is a community-funded platform. So if you enjoyed listening, you can support the project by sending some sats to the QR code on our homepage at bitcoinstoa.com. Or you can stream sats using something like the Breeze app, which has a really badass podcast feature. With that said, today I'm honored to welcome Hodlonaut from Citadel 21, who has kindly offered his time to be here. Hodlonaut, welcome to the Stoa.
Thanks a lot, man. Happy to be here. Nice to meet you.
Amazing. Yeah, so this is a podcast for Bitcoiners. I mean, we're kind of at the grassroots start of this journey, but our goal, our target audience is Bitcoiners, either Bitcoiners in the making who are becoming Bitcoiners or seasoned ones. So I think a lot of them are going to dig the really unique space that you've created in cyberspace. And, you know, for those who aren't familiar with Citadel 21 yet, I'm excited for you to kind of tell us a bit about what it is, why you created it. But before we get into the project, I'd love to start with hearing your Bitcoin story. So, you know, how Bitcoin found you initially and maybe some of the significant moments along your journey that led you to the creation of Citadel 21 and sort of where we are today.
Sure. Yeah, I discovered Bitcoin in 2013. Random browsing the internet on the couch one evening.
Nice.
Saw it mentioned in, I don't remember which publication, some tech article. And that sent me on to the white paper. And I actually read the white paper that first evening. And obviously I didn't then grasp the enormity of this innovation, but it was enough to kickstart the rabbit hole for me immediately. So, you know, I pretty quickly I realized that this was basically digital scarcity, something. I was a child of the torrent era and like a huge pirater of software and movies. So I was very used to the concept of like data being something that could easily be copied and multiplied. I was also very aware of the money system already and like the inflation trap. So just realizing that here we have an asset that will never exceed 21 million units, that piqued my interest a lot immediately, and I started accumulating basically. I wanted, I just thought that if I just have a couple of these, I will have more than like the average person on the planet can have at any time. We are a lot of people. There's only 21 million Bitcoin, so that was the entry for me. But I've never like strayed away from Bitcoin after that. I hear a lot of people discovering it and lose interest and then coming back and that stuff. That never happened to me. I just my interest just intensified, and I've been on that journey since back then in 2013.
Amazing. And where did your, you mentioned that you kind of knew or were aware of money and sort of the fiat inflation trap. Where did that come from? And, based on your accent, I assume you're from a Norwegian country, like maybe Finland or Norway, I was guessing, if you want to say.
Yeah, I'm from Norway. That's correct. We have we have the most broken English accent in the world, I think. So it's easy to spot us.
It's a great accent. It's fully understandable, and it's got like a really unique like tinge to it. I love it. I work in a health network, and we have a lot of people from Scandinavia, and so it's not an unfamiliar accent for me. But what I was going to say is, like, where did the awareness of money come from? Is that something that's in the Norwegian school system? Did they talk about money? Where did the interest come from for you to be aware of it? Because I think for most people, that's rare to hear.
Yeah, not at all in the school system. We are taught the same bullshit as the rest of the world in the school system, basically. So I guess for me, I kind of started to doubt a lot of the narratives in the world for like in the aftermath of 9/11, that was like a thing for me. Started reading up. I was exposed to a gentleman named Michael Rupert, unfortunately deceased now, but he wrote a lot about both like the banking system, and he was especially interested in like peak oil and the dollar hegemony and stuff like that. So I was red pilled on how money was created, and obviously I thought that was ridiculous. I mean, inflation is something I actually, even as a child, I was annoyed. I didn't really understand inflation, of course. I was just annoyed that to see that the money I saved, I noticed that over time things started costing more and more, like the ice cream I used to buy and stuff like that. And I thought that was just stupid. Here I'm saving these coins and they're getting worth less every year. That's ridiculous to me. So just to have like a finite mass of an asset that can never be debased was extremely attractive to me immediately.
Amazing. Yeah, and I think probably coming from the monetary side into Bitcoin probably contributed to your conviction, because I kind of, I think most people stray at some point. Like you said, either they lose interest or they don't, that first touch point isn't powerful enough to really captivate them, or they get distracted by, the shitstorm of bullshit that works around Bitcoin to try and pick up the people who aren't fully committed or wanting to understand it yet. And maybe a good place to go next is like, what is, from your perspective, what is Citadel 21 and why did you create it? Because it is like, dude, I dove into that, right? Your space, citadel21.com, is its own rabbit hole. And I dove into that, and it was like filled with some of the most OG, weird, wonderful, fantastic content from Bitcoiners. And I love so many things about the space you've created, but maybe from your, in your words, what is Citadel 21 and why did you create it?
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, and I'm really happy to hear you like it. Means a lot that Bitcoiners like yourself appreciate what we do.
Cool.
I don't know. I've been embedded into the Bitcoin community for quite a few years now. I started out interacting on Bitcoin forum. I was on Reddit a lot before I entered the realm of Bitcoin Twitter. I guess I went balls deep there early 2017, and I've always had a huge appreciation and fascination for what's coming out of Bitcoiners. The art is amazing, the memes are amazing, the philosophy is amazing. They are overall extremely principled people, independent thinkers. So, I mean, this mesh of people who obviously are very different, but the totality of it creates a culture that I just thought was awesome. So the thought of Citadel 21 was me and my fiancée Katja. We started. I think it was one evening we talked about scenes. It's basically short for magazines, and a scene, at least here in Norway, was like a very grassroots kind of underground thing, just photocopied paper written by people who were part of some kind of community or scene. Like it could be football, it could be music, could be computers. And I was exposed to both football scenes and like I was into the Amiga community back in the day, and they had their own digital scenes. And I always liked, it usually had its very own flavor. It was very raw, unedited. You kind of got a feeling for an unfiltered feeling of what this community was all about. So we started thinking that this was something that didn't really exist in Bitcoin. You had
How long ago was this when you and your fiance first started this thought experiment?
This was basically January 2020.
Okay.
We thought I mean, this space has so much cool shit going on, and it's just, you know, being presented on Twitter or some thread on Reddit, and then it's gone, and it's not, it often doesn't get as many eyes or as much presentation or attention as it deserves. And I'm not a huge fan of, I mean, I think the moment content goes through the filter of an editorial filter of any entity that needs to toe a specific correctness or a specific political line, or they can't be toxic, or they can't be this or they can't be that, you lose a lot of realness and a lot of the thing that really defines a culture.
Yeah, you
so,
lose all the character. It gets diluted to the point of not even being relatable, I find. And I think the rawness is actually something that people are like, the authenticity and the unapologetic rawness of things is actually one of the biggest attractors for me to you know, point my energy at something these days, quite frankly. If the minute I get the sense that it's been polished or edited, it just takes everything out of it. So I really respect that.
Follow you completely on that. That's like a huge guiding thing for us, and for me personally in my life, in other ways than Citadel 21 as well. Like intuition and authenticity needs to match.
Yes.
Actually, like in volume 1, our first release, I've only written one article in Citadel 21, and that was the welcome article. And I touched on the toxicity of Bitcoiners there. And I think, to me, the word toxic, Bitcoin maximalist, that's just another word of being unfiltered, raw, authentic, unwilling to compromise just to be not hurt people's feelings. Just, I mean, basically the opposite of everything that's wrong with the clown world today, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's funny that they get, I mean, people who use the label toxic is like, if you're soft, sometimes you need a little cure. Maybe that toxicity is what hardens you to stop being so fucking soft. And I think it's, you know, it's one of these things where I want to talk about this whole notion of toxic maximalism a little bit later. But one thing I wanted to, I guess, ask about is like, you know, I love that I love the database nature of how you present things, right? There's volumes. Each volume has sort of like a time chunk, has its own art. And I really think that, like you said, you have all this amazing wisdom and this beautiful creativity. And I think like a really potent tweet or a really good meme is just like a new form of art, that I think there's this deep sense of beauty where you almost get to understand where someone's coming from through their art. And I think that the curation of this diversity of art that you see on Bitcoin Twitter is an art in and of itself, and is actually one of the really important ones, because you're essentially doing the work of collecting all the amazing shit that is out there but undiscovered largely, and putting it in one place in a digestible way so that people can navigate it. And I think it's so cool. And one thing I love is that all these volumes are laid out digitally, but you also do physical copies. And this is something where I've always been a collector of things. I've always liked, you know, whether it was like Pokemon cards when I was younger, or I live in Canada, we have these hockey cards that, you know, I would collect from like McDonald's when they gave them out. So I think the collector in me loved the idea of Bitcoin, knowing that this is scarce. This is going to be something people will want. And so that's kind of what made me start to collect that. But this whole notion that you print limited runs of 1,000 copies for each volume. Why print in the world of digital? Why print physical magazines? I want to hear your perspective. I love the idea. And I just recently, like literally, I went from never hearing about Citadel 21 to hearing about it 2 weeks ago, buying some zines to have in my house as inspiration, because I really think that they're like printed art. And, you know, why print physical copies in a digital world? What was the incentive to do that?
Yeah, once again, really cool to hear it. Like, you recently discovered us and you love it, and because we haven't been, you know, this is grassroots shit. We're not like doing any big PR pushes or like promotions, or we are just out there, and plebs discover us at their own pace, and when we sell out, we're sold out. So on the motivation for making it physical was, first of all, a lot of people requested it from us. Like, they really loved the art, and they thought like, fuck, we want this physically to collect and cherish.
Yeah, it's like an artifact, a physical artifact.
Yeah, and I started really liking the thought, to manifest this into meat space, just take it out of the internet and making something physical to hold in my hands, as like making it even more real. I mean, we put in a lot of work on this, and I'm just really happy we did it. And it's not a lucrative business money wise. It's a huge pain in the ass to ship globally these paper copies in this time. Like they disappear, they get fucked up in transit. I mean, it's a lot of time to produce and to support, follow up the whole thing. So, but we're gonna keep doing it as long as we manage to break even. And the more people discover us, the more even we break, and the more maybe we can even get some profit out of this, because so far only volume 1 has sold out. As you mentioned, they are limited to 1,000 copies each.
Yeah, I love that.
Each copy is hand numbered. So I mean, there is that organic touch to it as well. So yeah, I guess the main motivations was people requested it. We initially thought that sounds like a lot of work and with little upside, but I'm glad we did it, and I think it's really cool to have these magazines lying on the table here at home.
Yeah, dude, I agree, and I might gift some of them to people who I'm looking to orange pill, but on the condition that like I'm taking this shit back in a year if you don't use it and take good care of this.
Exactly.
And I mean, if it's any consolation, I'm like a ruthless stacker. There's nothing, it would be very hard, apart from giving like maybe $5 in Bitcoin to someone, for anything to warrant me giving up my Bitcoin. Yeah. So buying the zines on your store was actually the first time I've ever paid for anything in Bitcoin. So I don't know what that tells you, but clearly you're doing something right, because to take Bitcoin from my cold hands means that something is of a lot of value and significance. And I think the notion that people are, it's not just, I didn't buy the zine. I bought the reason why you're doing this and the ethos that I kind of absorbed from looking through your content and why you're doing it. And yeah, and I'm excited to see them and have them here and be able to look at them for inspiration, right? Like art, my role now is really just to be inspired by the art of others and use that to kind of fuel what we're doing at the Stoa. Yeah, dude, I think it's really cool. I love that you're motivated enough to do the health network that I was an executive for also has a retail business. So I understand the struggle of navigating logistics on a global level with all the bullshit that, this whole notion that if something gets lost, whose fault is it? It kind of rests on you, even if it costs you money. And if it's not even a very profitable business, that's tough. And so much love for the motivation to continue doing that. Whoever you and your team are, you're doing an amazing job. And yeah, I really like the physical form. I think it's a big thing to anchor things for me, where I can look at a piece of art, I can look at this zine without having to look at my computer, because along with the computer comes the trap of all the things that the computer also distracts you with. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, there really is something to pulling things out of the screen and into your hands. Yeah. And just a couple of things. First of all, I have to give a huge shout out to Martin Fisher at Cypherpunk now. He designed the cover of Volume 2, and he has also been our designer of the physical scenes for the 10 first volumes. And yeah, in my opinion, he's one of the best, if not the best, Bitcoin artist out there. I'm lucky enough to own quite a few pieces of his art, and they have like very prominent spots on my wall here at home. And the other thing is, you said you paid with sats, and you haven't done that with a lot of other stuff, if anything. And first of all, that's really cool to hear. And second of all, I have to mention that we only accept Bitcoin. Yes. We do not accept fiat, and we also pay all of our suppliers, like our designers, the printing, the shipping, the hosting, everything is paid with Bitcoin as well. So we actually run a circular Bitcoin economy, 100%.
Powerful.
With Citadel 21. So this is it's by design that we don't accept anything but Bitcoin, and we had a lot of requests from people to please take my shitty fiat. And I know we would sell quite a lot more scenes if we started accepting fiat, but we choose not to, because we really want to keep this thing pure, and that's like one of the ways we're doing that.
I love it. I love it. I'm a big fan, and I'm sure, you know, not everyone, a true Bitcoiner, I think when they see a fellow Bitcoiner doing something and building, like you said, that circular sats economy, I think will respect that and be willing to part with some sats for, maybe it depends on the period of time you're in and how many sats you've accumulated, but I think it's awesome. I want to talk about Bitcoin culture, because this is one of the things that I'm or description of Bitcoin culture, because it is this wide, diverse group of humans across the planet. And, you know, it is a community. And I think within every community, my biggest role in my previous role with the Health Network was to understand, was community design. Like, how do we create sustainable communities that don't require constant input of energy to kind of form themselves in alignment with our values that we held? And I think Bitcoin culture is this ephemeral thing that's being slowly built, because we're so early. It's going to continue being built. And it's almost like each OG Bitcoiner takes it on themselves to play a part of making sure Bitcoin culture goes in the right direction. And I want to hear from you, what is Bitcoin culture to you? But I want to first start by talking about, I want to just read this paragraph that you have listed on your website on the About page at Citadel 21, because I think it's brilliant. And I think it encapsulates so many awesome things. Bitcoin culture is rich and varied. It contains a multitude of voices, opinions, and flavors. Together, they form what is seemingly chaos, but with an abundance of signal. Citadel 21 aims to curate this chaos and to put some of the best, coolest, and weirdest pieces of raw signal on display. And that is a fucking mic drop paragraph, because I think it encapsulates perfectly what you're doing at Citadel 21. But maybe from your own personal perspective, like, what is if someone says, what is Bitcoin culture? What do you say to answer that, as long or as short as you want?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's I haven't formulated an answer to it before. I haven't gotten the question like that before, so I'll try to just have a flow of consciousness on what it brings to me. And I think part of it is like the unedited raw part, that you need to go to the source. You need to like get underneath the influencers and the agendas. And the word pleb comes to mind when I talk about Bitcoin culture. Bitcoin plebs to me represent like people who have no other agenda than speaking their mind completely freely and honestly. And a consequence of that is that you really want to defend Bitcoin. You really want to defend the monumental power that Bitcoin brings to the table for change, for hope, for everything the world is missing right now. And so I think Bitcoin culture is like all the interests that these honest that these people that have discovered the power of truth and honesty bring to the table. And that means it can be, you know, it can be like untapped growth, like living off the land, discovering low time preference and living out low time preference in your life. It can be, I mean, the meme lords is a big aspect of Bitcoin culture. It's just super varied. It's all the enthusiasm, the honest enthusiasm that all these different people bring to the table, and it kind of distills into a very powerful signal to me that I can easily recognize. But it can be a lot of different things, and I think the content we have in Citadel 21 reflects that, because you can read about everything from people like drawing parallels between Brazilian jiu-jitsu and Bitcoin, and you know, permaculture and their practice as a physician, or like just how people apply lessons of Bitcoin into their field of interest or their life. Yeah.
Very well said. Yeah, I think like Bitcoin culture to me is almost like a Rubik's cube. It has so many different faces that are constantly morphing and changing. But one thing I really think is cool is that Bitcoin culture has almost adopted some of the hard-coded elements of the protocol, right? Like this openness and this sense of responsibility, I think, is a big one. And the reason like the OG Bitcoiners that I love to listen to, the reason I actually like to listen to them is because they're coming from a heavily informed perspective. Because in order to be a true Bitcoiner, I think it's baked into the protocol that you must take responsibility. You must understand, you start by understanding money, but then it kind of leads you down this path where it's like inevitably you begin to want to understand economics and macroeconomics and philosophy and like you want to understand fundamental truths about the world. And the cool thing about Bitcoin is that as our purchasing power goes up as Bitcoiners, we end up having this freed up time so that we can actually learn about the world, learn about governance, learn about all these different elements that are in Bitcoin, but are so subsurface that you really have to kind of dive deep down the rabbit hole to get to them. And I think this sort of unapologetic and well, I guess it's just an intolerance to bullshit, actually, which I find the most candid and attractive thing about Bitcoin culture is that there is zero tolerance for bullshit.
Yeah.
And some people's feelings get hurt when someone says that's bullshit, that's wrong, here's the truth. But you know what? That is actually what this fucking world needs, really. It's like this beautiful element that has seemingly been lost because of a sort of this soft culture of softness that develops where no one wants to hurt anyone's feelings, so no one actually speaks their truth. And I think the full, open honesty, unfiltered honesty that comes from the signal that comes out of Bitcoin culture is just it's very refreshing. I think is maybe the best way for me to put it.
100%. And it's you will be called out, and anyone will be called out in Bitcoin if they start spewing out bullshit. It doesn't matter who you are. There are no kings here. We're all plebs, and I want nothing else than people to judge me by my words and my actions, and I want them to slay me really hard if I start if bullshit starts coming out of me. And I absolutely expect them to. And so it's just low time preference, keeping it real, and enjoying all the beauty and the rewards that come out of that, because it's really, I really appreciate everything I've gotten from being in this space. Most of all, like the connections there, the web of people I've gotten to know. I love the term Citadel. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Citadel?
Yeah, it's
not familiar with it.
It's an amazing pleb called Soul Exporter and his son Solex Boy. They actually wrote an article in Citadel 21 about their Citadel concept, and it's basically just you have the word citadel and you have a mesh, and all these relationships and connections we form, they basically form a global Citadel of Bitcoiners that are connected in different ways and that can start relying and supporting each other in different ways. And I think we're just going to see more and more of that, even seeing it more and more organized. And I think that will be a powerful tool and a powerful asset for all Bitcoiners in the years ahead.
Yeah, that's a really cool concept. I read an article by Tomer Strolight that talked about basically made the metaphor of Bitcoin being a cybernetic metabrain, and compared the anatomy of Bitcoin to the anatomy of a brain, and like all the way down to neurons and dendrites and how things propagate neurally through our brains, and how things propagate essentially at the neural level through Bitcoin Twitter. And I just thought, like, Bitcoin has so, and I even, I spoke to a guy that keeps bees a couple of weeks ago, and there were so many parallels that I kind of want to talk about in terms of the hive behavior of bees and the hive behavior of Bitcoin. And but before we get into that, I just want to touch on the whole nature of being a truly Bitcoin online store, because I paid in Bitcoin. The checkout experience was super smooth, and one thing I really loved was the privacy measures you've taken to protect customer information, which I think is something that doesn't get talked about, but I found really really potent. And this whole idea that after 120 days, all of your customer information gets deleted, so that to make sure that nothing gets held and there's no vulnerability there in terms of your information getting out. So, how was the experience of setting up a Bitcoin store? I'm assuming you use sort of BTC Pay server and built that in. Like, was it an intuitive process? What were your biggest challenges? Because right now, one thing we're doing at the Stoa is we're going to create some Bitcoin gear, and it's not going to be branded as anything. It's just literally going to have subtle Bitcoin logos on it. We're calling it Bitcoin livery. That old term livery, as in like, basically we want to create the OG uniform for Bitcoiners and be fully transparent to the point where we just literally say what our costs are when we create a batch. We're going to price it in sats based on our fiat cost and a fixed margin, and have it be very transparent that over time your cost in fiat is going to go up, but the cost in sats for this clothing is going to go down. It's just like durable, high quality, simple clothing. And so we're starting to kind of research the process of creating a Bitcoin store and creating our own Bitcoin circular economy. So how was the experience for you? Because the checkout experience at your store was magical. And I have experience with store checkouts because, like I said, we have a retail presence with Shopify, with the health network that I still kind of am involved with. Talk a little bit about the setup process there, because it was truly a very, like, just the whole algorithm of like checkout, communication, experience of like getting confirmation for my order, getting confirmation of shipping. Like, it was just a really seamless experience. So can you talk a bit about how easy it was to set up, and sort of maybe even sort of what apps you're using, so that anyone out there looking to create a Bitcoin store can kind of take a little bit of your research?
It's probably gotten easier now than it was back then. Things move fast in Bitcoin. I would say it was probably a very difficult process to get it set up like we did. BTC Pay server is just an amazing product. It's really amazing. And if you're going to sell something that only requires your customer's email, basically if you're going to sell a digital product, for example, it's very easy to set up. The moment you need to integrate into, like, you want to collect more information, if you want to send something in the physical world, BTC Pay only doesn't support collection of that data. So you need to include the third-party software. Our solution is like a hybrid using WordPress and WooCommerce with BTC Pay as the payment processor.
Nice.
It's kind of streamlined from the BTC Pay side. There are tutorials out there to do this specific setup. BTC Pay has a very cool Docker install that automates a lot. But in reality, there will be need for small tweaks and customizations before shit starts working. That's just how real life works.
Yep.
So I guess the reason we were able to get this up in a timely manner was because we got hands-on support from the BTC Pay team to set it up. They have very good support. So I encourage anyone to just jump into it and start setting it up if they want to have their own BTC Pay powered store. It's definitely something you will get done if you just invest enough effort and time, but it's still not easy, I would say. And another thing,
nothing worth doing is easy, right? Just requires persistence.
Absolutely. You just need to decide that you're going to do it and keep grinding until it's a reality. But another, you said you like the checkout process, and I think just a small thing that I think is really cool is that you can skin the checkout, so you can like use the colors of your website or your graphic profile in the actual invoice presentation, like the QR screen. And we had the art designed by SF, really great Bitcoiner and friend of us, skin that for us. So we're like using our our brand colors in the checkout, which also like makes it very like it all fits together in the checkout process.
Yeah, great experience. I could say firsthand as a recent customer Citadel 21, if you're going to buy something, number one, it may be one of the few things that are worth letting go of your sats, and number two, was just a great experience overall. And so yeah, kudos on you and your team for getting that done and sort of setting the example and showing people that it is possible to create a really seamless, intuitive Bitcoin checkout process, despite there being some challenges obviously in the setup. But like you said, if you just decide you're going to do it, and your conviction is high that it can be done, and seeing it done first, like I probably would have been more set back by the friction if I hadn't checked out at your store once, now that we're trying to set up our own thing. So thank you for sort of blazing the trail there and showing that it's possible and it can be really simple and intuitive.
I have to throw in as well, like to you or anyone considering doing anything in Bitcoin, that kind of maybe it seems like a big hurdle or it's kind of scary because it's new territory technically. Just start doing it and ask for help, because Bitcoiners really are the most friendly and helpful people. And you will get a lot of support and a lot of help if you're trying to do things and reach out for support here.
Powerful. Let's talk about the notion of toxic maximalism, just real quick. And just as kind of another point that's sort of related to that, like I said, I was doing a podcast with a guy who keeps bee colonies, and I found so many parallels. Like one of the biggest things that I really loved is that when you look at a bee colony or a beehive and you don't really understand what's going on, it looks like complete chaos, right? Bees are flying everywhere, literally just like looks like a swarm of chaos. But when you actually start to understand the mechanics of how a colony works, their social structure, like what the bees are actually doing, what the different bees' roles are, it turns into like this beautifully coordinated orchestra where you're like, actually, when I understand how it works, it's super organized and it's super coherent in terms of like having the, you start to see where the bees come in and where they leave are different runways. You start to see the different roles that bees play. And when you go near, like certain bees will actually start to point their butts up at you and actually like kind of say like, hey, be careful, like you're getting close here. And I think there's so many parallels to this hive mind mentality where every single bee in the colony has an allegiance to the queen. They will do everything they can, even if it comes at the expense of their own death, to protect the queen. And the parallel I saw was that the queen is like the protocol, and plebs or Bitcoiners are like the bees. And we have different roles, right? Like miners forage for energy to continue keeping the queen alive. There will be others that go out and explore and sort of communicate with other queens to kind of build relationships. And so there's all these different roles, but at the end of the day, everyone protects the queen. And this whole notion that all of the bees that have an allegiance to the queen are basically getting labeled as toxic maximalists by people who are seeking to attack the hive, right? By people who are seeking to pull people away from the hive and distract them with shit coins, or people who are trying to do a narrative attack on the queen by saying, oh, Bitcoin takes up too much energy and stuff like that. So I think I'd love to hear your take on this whole notion of toxic maximalism, because I think that it's literally just an unwillingness to accept bullshit, I think, is what it is. And only people who, it's toxic to the people who are trying to attack the protocol. It's not toxic to anyone else. It's actually a beautifully built-in immune system for Bitcoin. So I'd love to hear your take on sort of this label of toxic maximalism and your thoughts on, I mean, you've already kind of said like the unapologetic authenticity is actually a beautiful part of Bitcoin, and I completely agree. But to someone who's like, oh, I see all this toxicity on social media, what would you say to those people?
Yeah, I can touch on a couple of thoughts there. Like one thing is there is no pleb that's the same as another pleb, and in my head, like toxicity manifests in a lot of ways. You have like more or less gentle ways. You also have sometimes I see people on Twitter that, I don't know, overdo it a little bit. You will always have that they realize that, oh, this is like cool Pleb Bitcoiners, and they start misunderstanding and just get dark and basically hostile and nasty for no reason. I don't really approve of that myself, but we're all different. I mean, you have the whole spectrum of different manifestations of this, and I think that's great. I mean, there is no manual you can read to find out how you're going to be the perfect toxic Bitcoin maximalist. It's just a spectrum of results from a large group of people that find enormous meaning in the protocol of Bitcoin. And this queen, as you say it, if that's the protocol, this queen supplies us with the uncontestable truth every 10 minutes. And that's just something that transforms lives and gives hope and motivates, and it provides a very solid foundation that we can build not only our financial lives on, but like our spiritual lives and our it's so meaningful, and it motivates us to defend the hive at all costs in all kinds of different ways. You know, like you say, these bees have different roles and different jobs, and Bitcoiners have different strengths and different weaknesses, but they will apply them in their own best way to further the cause, to protect the protocol, to make sure that people who try to muddy the waters or scam people away from transforming their lives positively, we basically attack those people and we call them out, and we have no patience with them at all. And that's how it should be, in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, bees use pheromones to signal danger and to tag intruders. And I think Twitter is like this beautiful space where you see the pheromones through the messages and through what people are saying. And, you know, you see people when you get attacked by the hive, you have two choices. Listen to the signal and learn the lesson. Don't attack the hive. Realign kind of your understanding to make sure it aligns with reality. Or number two is like, just think that the hive is out of control and then talk shit about the hive. And the people, you know, I've seen a lot of people who get attacked and use it as a reality check, learn the lesson. Like when I get stung by a bee, my message is I got too close to the hive or I was doing something that threatened them. And, you know, they get a decision tree where it's like either you realign and you understand the lesson and you learn from the lesson, or you just kind of like move away from it and don't learn the lesson. And then you're probably going to get stung again. So I think it's like I think the overarching thing that I loved about trying to look for parallels between this sort of bee colony behavior and Bitcoin is this notion of collective intelligence, where any bee alone is actually not that intelligent and doesn't really have much intelligence built in. But when you have the hive together, you essentially, out of that emerges this intelligence that cannot be achieved individually, but gets achieved collectively. And I think the whole thing with Bitcoin, really that collective intelligence emerges as well. And I think that's largely a byproduct of this beautiful game theory that's built in and sort of constantly evolving, where everyone is both acting out of selfish intentions, but the selfish intentions align perfectly with the collective benefit. And I think that's this beautiful elegance that you see in nature, and that you also see in Bitcoin. And I think it just reinforces the notion that like Bitcoin aligns with the laws of nature, right? It's decentralized. It has a core value set that is essentially based in laws of nature, laws of physics and math. And I think it's this fucking amazing thing, dude. It even just talking about it makes me so excited to be like, what else can I learn about this? What's the next learning, you know, piece that I want to get? And it's really borders on obsession, but I think it really, like you said, stems from this conviction that this literally changes people's lives and will change humanity, will morph humanity to align with truth, out of selfish desires. And it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. And it's not blind conviction. It's conviction sprung from experience, because it changes you in so many ways. The really cool analogy with the pheromones, because it's almost like, I think trust is a big thing, paradoxically, in Bitcoin, and the web of trust, and how this this trust is building trust is a very low time preference process. Tearing down trust is extremely, you can do it in one tweet. You can do it in one malicious action, or and it will be seen through immediately by the hive, because this web of trust is so well built out and sophisticated and fine-tuned, and it's fueled by an entire hive that has no other agenda than truth. So you will be called out mercilessly, and the whole like your position of trust will just be removed from the web immediately. And this is because you say we are, I mean, also fueled by self-interest, but truth is our self-interest in Bitcoin. Right. And that makes this web just stronger and stronger every day, and immune to being co-opted, basically. I mean, people try to, you know, sneak their way into this web of trust to you know, try to have an agenda or change the conversation in some malicious way, or like they're always caught pretty immediately and just, you know, sent packing. So it's beautiful to watch, to see not only consequence, but, you know, instant karma happening the moment you start bullshitting.
Yeah. And one thing that Dan, the guy who keeps bees, was talking about is like, the more you observe the hive, the more you understand the mechanics of the hive, and the more you can begin to see when the bees see a threat, right? The more you spend time around this Bitcoin hive, the easier it becomes to detect bullshit. And you're right, building trust is a low time preference thing, right? You have to be patient. You have to basically have a track record of being on the right side of the hive, right? And as your trust builds, if you put up a red flag and say, hey, this person's bullshitting, there's something up here, the higher your perceived trust is, the more that signal gets taken seriously. And I think there's like some really cool people I'm starting to discover in Bitcoin, like, you know, JW Weatherman and Heavily Armed Clown, these guys that really aren't like crazy popular. They're not like the famous people of Bitcoin Twitter, but they're super smart and they're super honest and they're super aligned with sort of the nature of this thing. And so I take what they say very seriously. And I think it's really just coming to the point that I'm seeing the signal much easier now in Bitcoin, and I'm starting to be able to be much better at identifying the noise by just spending time around the hive. And I really think it's like a, you know, like, I'm from Canada. I've traveled a lot and like seen, been part of like ceremonies with elders, and I've never really found that I had like a, you can call it what you want, like a spiritual place or a sense of belonging with a true community, other than kind of my family and core friend network. But in Bitcoin, I found like this sense of family, the sense of belonging, where it's like these people see reality for what it is. They're interested in taking responsibility. They're interested in learning, and they care deeply about something hugely important for humanity. And it's almost like you find this family, and all you want to do is then think, how can I contribute to this family? Like, how can I contribute to the diversity that's embraced within this family, and be close to it so that I can make sure that my values continue to align with these very, very like honorable values that this protocol has and that this community has at the core. And it just makes you want to be more part of it more and more, and learn more and more from it. And it's a never-ending source of inspiration for me. And, you know, people like yourself creating platforms for Bitcoiners by Bitcoiners is like very, very inspiring. So thank you for doing what you do.
Yeah, I feel you. It's so fucking cool to, I mean, just hearing you talk, just talking to you now, I'm enjoying it. Feels like we could sit and talk for hours. We probably could. I mean, I feel you know, brotherhood with you, and yeah, you're basically my friend now after having talked for 50 minutes, you know. So that's a remarkable thing about Bitcoin, that it brings us together in a very powerful way as human beings, and it kind of sends us in directions of personal development and important lessons of life. That's very inspiring and brings a lot of hope, I think.
Yeah, and it almost like it rehumanizes us a little bit, right? Because the human side of us, when we interact with someone, even if it's digitally, like I can't even see you, but I already feel like sort of like an energy between us where it's like we can relate on a lot of things. Because we relate on this, I know that we by de facto relate on a lot of other things. And it's funny how many Bitcoiners I talk to that also, you know, they take full responsibility for their wealth. They also are interested in taking full responsibility for their health. They're also responsible, or they're also interested in understanding how to be more self-reliant, how to protect themselves in terms of the privacy. Like there's so many things. Like this health network I'm part of is called the Foot Collective, and we basically, our mission is to help people reclaim responsibility for their health, and we started at the feet. And it's funny how many people that I come across that, you know, gravitate towards this network because of sort of quote unquote barefoot culture. People who understand that if you don't wear shoes that fuck your feet up and you spend a little bit of time barefoot, like that's a good start. And it's funny how many of those people also care about growing their own food, also care about connecting with other humans in person and limiting the amount of time they have on tech. And it's like, it's just funny how you find this one thing. If someone really cares about Bitcoin, you can almost make a lot of assumptions about other things that person cares about because that's built into the ethos of Bitcoin. And I think it's really, I'm looking forward to going to some in-person Bitcoin events because I haven't, you know, with all the travel nonsense going on right now, which I'm just kind of taking the mindset, I'm just going to ride it out and it'll end eventually. But I'm excited to meet other Bitcoiners in person because you're right. It is like people I've spoken to on the podcast, so the kind of people that I could go and get a beer with or smoke a joint with and talk to for like 3 hours and enjoy every second of it. And that's really hard to find today for me personally.
Yeah. The thing is probably that we're building on a solid foundation with Bitcoin. We agree on the foundation basically, and anything that's built on a true and solid foundation will be meaningful. It won't just collapse, and there won't be misunderstandings of intention or anything. It's just super honest, a super honest base we're building from. Well, I remember it. Next time you talk to this bee buddy of yours, you should ask him if he's interested in doing a write-up of these thoughts for Citadel 21. I think it sounds like potential for a really cool article there.
Well, it's funny you say that because I have two. So he is like a straight up noob. He's a very logical, rational guy, but he's extremely, he lives an extremely simple life. And so I wanted to talk to him about bees to understand his perspective of what he sees in bees. He's a very deep guy when it comes to philosophy, very smart dude. But from that, I wanted to gather my thoughts on the conversation I had with him. So I actually did a little write-up of the parallel between a beehive, all based on like this metaphor of collective intelligence. So I actually wrote something up to get my thoughts clear. So maybe I'll send that over. And I also have this like deeply rooted argument that Bitcoin fixes health. Like I spent the last 5 years of my lifeblood energy trying to fix the health problem. And the more I started learning about Bitcoin, because I actually helped to transfer our network treasury assets, which were in Canadian dollars, over to Bitcoin, because I realized it was melting at an insane pace. And so the more I started connecting Bitcoin and health, the more I realized that like actually Bitcoin fixes health, and you can't fix health without sound money. And so, yeah, anyway, I'll fire some stuff over to you. And if it's of interest or seems like something the readership would enjoy.
Yeah. Really appreciate it. If you send something over, we'll definitely consider it.
Cool. And I also think it's badass that you just accept submissions from everyone. Not that every submission is going to be put in there, but I think this whole notion of crowdsourcing, building a really strong sort of platform that is OG Bitcoiner, I think is going to attract. That's the secret sauce of attracting the magic, right? Because people find out about you for the right reasons, they align with you for the right reasons, and they want to help and they want to contribute. I think it's really cool that you just open source and say anyone is welcome to submit something. And I think that's how you get the best shit, really.
Yeah, absolutely. That was part of the philosophy from the start. And I think, I mean, I often reach out to people just after seeing a tweet or something and like, hey, this is a really cool perspective. Or maybe they wrote a Twitter thread, and I will often ask if they're interested in making an article out of it, because it was something fresh or cool. and they are often like, they often take this perspective like, but I'm not a writer. I never did that before. And then I will just reply, yeah, that's just great. I mean, you don't need to have contributed anything before, but I think you're bringing something to the table here that I think will benefit other people or be of interest to other people. So we have quite a few people in our volumes that have never written anything for anything before. That's cool, I think.
Yeah, I mean, people who write shit started at some point of not having written anything. So it's like, you know, if you have you sense signal in someone, it's cool that you just say, hey, you might not be a writer, but maybe all we're looking for is signal, not perfectly written essays.
Yeah, exactly. And people tend to think that to write something, you need to do it in a specific way. You need to follow some kind of dogma, or, you know, you need to structure it in a specific way. But there is really, for us, there are no rules like that. I mean, sometimes I will definitely copy edit a little bit to make things more readable or, you know, easier to digest. But like how it's structured or how it's written is, we want it as raw and as straight from the source as possible. That's basically it.
Powerful. Love it. All right, let's finish with some rapid fire questions I like to ask. So these answers can be as long or as short as you want. And then we'll let people know where to find all your stuff, and then we'll wrap it up. So first rapid fire question, what's your most recommended Bitcoin book?
I think I'll go with The Sovereignty Through Mathematics from Knut Svanholm.
Nice. Yeah, he's a beast. What's your definition of a pleb?
Ruthless honesty.
I love it. Yeah, and I actually looked this up because I was like, everyone's got their own definition of pleb, but where did this word come from? And it came from the plebeian class of Rome, which were free citizens, and they were often average working citizens who worked hard and saved. They were usually like farmers. And yeah, I mean, they're often seen as rude and toxic by people who are soft and attempting to scam others. And I think they're, you know, the coolest thing I think with plebs is that it's like this huge pool of people who are just relentless stackers. And I think that's really like this bolster in the Bitcoin's stability, and this whole notion that like TikTok next block, people want this scarce asset. And I think the collective that's known as plebs is like, literally, it's like the special forces of this battle that will be ongoing, and they're just uncompromising people who stand the line. And I think there's something so noble about that, of never really caring to be someone who's in the limelight, but just knowing that you are part of this, like you said, brotherhood of people who are all holding the fucking line, because there's going to be a lot of pressure, and this is an important line to hold. And I think it's so cool.
Yeah, plebs are line holders for sure.
Yes. What's your favorite mobile wallet?
Breeze.
Yeah, they have a great user interface.
Yeah, I fucking love Breeze. I love the team as well. They're very legit. Yeah,
and with most of the things that I use and support, it's really, I'm supporting it because the people doing it and why they do it, more so than the product itself. And usually they align, right? If someone's doing it for the right reasons, then they're usually going to create something good. And then last one is, who's your favorite person to hear speak or write about Bitcoin at the moment? Obviously that's fluid, but yeah, favorite person to hear speak or write about Bitcoin.
Yeah, that will be my good friend, Gigi.
Gigi, oh dude, 21 Lessons is like my Bible. It's the one I try and give to people as much as possible, because he's like really just a skilled writer, I think, and so deeply knowledgeable. And I think that's sometimes it's, you know, the people who know the most are sometimes not the best people at articulating it. And I think he's got the best of both camps. And that resonates with me as well.
Yeah, so, and he has the meme aspect as well. He has a strong understanding and love for memes as well. So he's very multi-dimensional in how he presents stuff, and it's just great.
Yeah, the memes on Bitcoin Twitter are like, the best way to explain them is world class. They make me laugh, they make me think, and they make me want to be like, I got to find more of these, because these are just like the most brilliant things that, like, Bitcoin Twitter always fucking wins. If you do something silly, Bitcoin Twitter is going to remind you ruthlessly that you fucked up. And, you know, you just got to not take yourself too seriously to survive this. And I think that's a good quality to have. So
absolutely.
Cool, man. Well, Hodlonaut, it's been a treat speaking with you. I look forward to speaking with you down the road again. And I'm really stoked to get these zines in my environment so that I can show them off to other people. If people want more info about you, citadel21.com. Twitter is CTDL21. Is there any other coordinates that you want to put out there to our community before we wrap up?
No, I think that's it. You can access our shop from citadel21.com. You can reach out to us at CTDL21 on Twitter for any questions, or if you wanna write something for us, or anything. You can reach me at Hodlonaut on Twitter as well. So
Powerful.
happy to connect with anyone.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I'll send those. I'll kind of refine them a little bit, but I'll send a couple of those pieces over. If it's something of interest, then it would be an honor to contribute to your project. And to everyone listening, thanks for being here. If you enjoyed the conversation, you can support the project by going to Citadel 20. Well, you can support Citadel 21 if you're an OG Bitcoiner. I think you'll love the stuff that's there, even if it's just reading the digital versions of these volumes. It's really awesome stuff. If you want to support the Stoa project, you can go to bitcoinstoa.com, send some sats to the QR code on the homepage. Wishing you all a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you for helping to build and contribute to Bitcoin, because if you're listening to this, then you're part of it. And thanks for being here, and ciao for now.